All right, welcome to today's show with strategy. Why strategy might be one of the mispriced stocks on Wall Street. Not financial advice, not tax advice, not legal advice in this show, but I'm going to get in today on that particular point. And also, we're going to talk about strategy's $555 million buy as well. And jump into what's actually going on with strategy and why is strategy mispriced if you look at traditional finance versus the new era of digital finance. And we're going to look at the two worlds and why what I'm saying makes a lot of sense. So what's up, John? So I'm going to go and just show you the updates of the buy today so you have the data, and then we're going to get into why strategy is so mispriced, and you're going to see it and go, this is a pretty cool stock. So what's happening in the world today, as we know, Saylor just dropped 555 million on Bitcoin. He's betting on next 100,000 Bitcoin next is the question mark there. So we don't know if he's betting on that. That's just the headlines. So here's what Saylor did. He got in the game big again, as he always does. And the company just bought 6,556 Bitcoin today. And they've got now 555 million more Bitcoin, and the average price is at $84,000 that they just bought this at. So that brings the total amount of their stack to 538,000 Bitcoin, and they've now got $45 billion worth of Bitcoin. All right, and the cost basis is about 36 billion. Now they gobbled up these stocks or this Bitcoin recently. And they actually gobbled it up through two ways. They issued common stock to buy more Bitcoin, and then they issued more preferred stock with their strike offering. So as you know, they have multiple ways to acquire Bitcoin. One of the ways they can acquire Bitcoin is they could issue more shares of stock, which basically means they print more MicroStrategy paper, and then people like you and me, we go and we buy that, and they take the money to buy Bitcoin. They also have an offering called Strike, that they just put in place months back. And that's another way for them to capitalize on raising money, which is a preferred stock, more of a fixed return that's paid out. And then they put that money into Bitcoin. So today's purchase of 555 million Bitcoin was done through that very specific strategy that we know they often deploy. Okay. So that is the news on what they actually purchased today and what they actually did. Now, in particular, what I wanted to get into today is I want to talk about why I think they're completely underpriced as a company, and why their recent buy is exciting. And we know that Saylor continues to buy week after week. He didn't buy a couple weeks ago, but he continues to buy. But if we look at the world of traditional finance and why strategy is on the move to becoming the next behemoth in the marketplace. They trade, in terms of their trading volume on a daily basis, they trade at the highest volume like the Mag 7, the Googles of the world, the Apples of the world, etc. So the trading volume of the stock is super, super high. But the size of the company is only in the top 120 companies in the world. So when you look at Google and Tesla and you look at Apple and companies like that, they're in the Mag 7. So they're the Magnificent Seven. They're some of the highest valued companies in the world. The trading volume, of course, is going to be very, very high because the companies are very large. But when you look at Strategy, which is one of the top 120 companies in the world, they match the trading volume of the Magnificent Seven. So the fact that they trade at that volume has to do with the volatility of the stock, which one who owns the stock, not financial advice, likes the volatility because the ability for this company to go up because of their volatility is huge. Also, the ability to go down is huge because of their volatility. So we know that they're on the scoreboard and they're being noticed because of their trading volume, but there's something bigger than this that's at play with this actual stock. And the bigger play is not that Saylor keeps buying, but the bigger play is how do you value a company like Strategy? And so when you look at typical companies in the stock market like Google or like Apple, et cetera, metaphorically, they got a lemonade stand and they're selling lemonade. And at the end of the day, the company's valued based on how good their product is, how good their earnings are, and also how good the leadership and the vision is. And when companies like this get valued, like a Google or a Tesla or an Apple, they get valued based on their earnings. They're selling quote unquote lemonade every day. They're selling a product every day. So they have earnings that they report, and they get valued based on their earnings per share. So if they have a net profit per share, let's say of $1, and their net profit per share is $1, they will get valued at a multiples of that earnings. So if their net profit, for example, just as an example, is $1, sometimes companies like this get valued at 15x to 25x or even 30x that dollar. So they'll get a 25x valuation. Now, that valuation is not necessarily on how profitable they are. That's a component of their net profit based on their earnings per share. So that's a component of it, but they're also being valued on the future outlook of the company, right? So when you look at this, this becomes very interesting, because if you're going to break down strategy and you're going to compare strategy to companies like Google and Tesla, you have to look at both sides of the game. And this is the tough thing of why Wall Street, I think, is missing the biggest behemoth on the block, which is strategy, and they don't know how to value it. And so you're not seeing a proper valuation from strategy, in my opinion, right now. And I'm going to give you the reason why. Okay. So one of the reasons why is if you look at an Apple that could get a 15x valuation or a 20x valuation based on their current earnings today, based on the product that they're selling. People like iPhones. They're like, we like an iPhone, we're going to give it a great valuation, right? Now with the tariffs and all this stuff in China, there's a little uncertainty around that. But most of the time, great iPhone, great product, great valuation. Microsoft, great product, great valuation. Tesla, great product, great valuation. So they look at the product, they look at the leadership and the vision, and they look at the future outlook of that, what that company could be worth. And this is the key component. This is the key component. They look at the future outlook of what that company could be worth, right? And all these companies have one thing in common. They're selling lemonade. They're selling products, metaphorically, right? Lemonade. They got a lemonade stand. They're selling stuff every day. But strategy is very different, because while they are a stock, they're not selling lemonade. When you look at the company, and this is why they have an unfair advantage, and all the other companies that are following the strategy playbook that are starting to put Bitcoin on their balance sheet, they don't stack up and compare to strategy, okay? Because strategy's basic operating basis of their company is to buy more Bitcoin. So they're not selling lemonade every day like traditional companies. They're buying more Bitcoin. So instead of a lemonade stand, they have a treasure chest of digital gold. So herein lies the problem. How do you value a company then who isn't selling lemonade or widgets like other stocks or other companies are in the stock market? So how do you value this company? The typical traditional valuation model for traditional companies like Google and Apple and Tesla, all of them, they're valued based on a multiple of their earnings. But strategy is not getting that valuation, right? Because they're not selling lemonade every day. They're not selling the product every day. What are they doing? They're building a treasure chest of digital gold, which makes them a very different company altogether, which means that the majority of the population has not woken up to how valuable this company is and how valuable it will be in the future. Because if you were to properly metaphorically compare the two, and you're going to value an Apple or a Tesla or a Google based on their product, their lemonade that they sell every day, and the future outlook or forecast of what that company may do based on their leadership, their product, and their earnings report, you would then metaphorically, comparatively, even though they're not apples to apples, you would then have to value strategy based on their Bitcoin treasure chest and the future outlook of what that Bitcoin could be worth in the future, not what it's worth on the balance sheet today. Does this make sense? So this is a very, very different game. And most people are looking at strategy based on what it has on the balance sheet today. And we know the balance sheet of Bitcoin rests around $45 billion in terms of Bitcoin. And the valuation of the company in terms of the market capitalization is valued around $85 billion. So people look at the company, they say they're valued at $85 billion. But ultimately, if it metaphorically, they're not apples to apples. I'm not saying they are, because strategy doesn't have earnings on the Bitcoin that they hold in their treasure chest, right? Okay. So they're not selling Bitcoin every day. They don't have a lemonade stand where they're selling products every day, right? So when you look at this, when you really look at this, and this is such an important point, like this is so important to understand what this stock really is. When you look at this, you would properly, to value strategy properly, you would look at their Bitcoin treasure chest and what they have, and then you would project and go, what are the future potential earnings of Bitcoin going to be 5-10 years down the road? And then you would value the company in proportion to that. And in the financial model right now of Wall Street, they are not used to valuing companies with this model because this is a new model. Does this make sense? Everybody tracking this? This is a totally new model. Okay, we got Anthony on, we got Nick on. What's going on? We got Brandon on. We got the crew here. Right, John. So this is a completely new model. Would you guys agree? Everybody tracking me? If you agree, put in the chat box. I want to hear from you. But this is a new model. Okay, and Brand is like, I can't believe more people aren't seeing the opportunity, and they're not. This is still like traditional finance has not woken up to this yet in a full capacity. And so now what you have is you got two roads, right? You've got the traditional finance model that's used to looking at Googles and the Apples and the Microsofts and the whatever the world. Hold on one second. I'm turning this down because it's loud. So you have all these companies that are traditionally valued, right? And you have the traditional finance that values companies and stocks in a certain way. So you got traditional finance, right? Then you have the Bitcoin and the crypto world who live in this world in kind of a silo. And the people who are fanatics about Bitcoin and crypto, they're kind of over here. But what we're not seeing is there's a merging in the middle of the two worlds now. So one who's just solely Bitcoin focused, they look at Bitcoin and they go, okay, this is Bitcoin and this is how Bitcoin operates and it's digital gold and there's only 21 million coins and that's all there ever will be. And they have the halving where the halving cuts the supply in half and it gets more valuable and it's a scarce asset and it's digital gold. And they look at it and they go, great, this is fantastic. It lives on this great network. It's secure. It's amazing. It's the future. Great. Bitcoin point of view, great. Traditional finance point of view, you have Bitcoin and strategy. Strategy is a stock. That's traditional finance. You have Bitcoin, which is not traditional finance. You have a merging of the two. How do you now value the company? That is the question. And when the world wakes up to this, okay, when the world wakes up to this, it is going to be a wild, wild, wild ride. I can tell you that, okay? When the news is good, a wild ride up. When the news is bad, a wild ride down because this stock has such extreme volatility. So, looking at the valuation, you can mock up numbers yourself. I'm not saying this is a prediction on where the stock will go, okay? Because I'm just doing this on hypotheticals and not price predictions of where the stock's going to go in 2025, 2026. I've done that in other videos, okay? I'm just looking at what could a company like this be valued at in the future. So if you look at Bitcoin right now and you think that 4 or 5 years from now, Bitcoin might be 5x where it's at right now, couldn't that make a case that strategy should be valued based on the future outlook of Bitcoin because that's what it holds versus just its present holdings of Bitcoin of what it has on the balance sheet and give it some market capitalization of it's worth an $85 billion company? Everybody tracking this? So I think strategy is actually completely undervalued right now. Completely undervalued. All right. And so what we're seeing happening, and let's not forget, and somebody here's mentioning the new FASB rules. So what's happening with FASB is the Fair Accounting Standards Board, which basically up until recently, the way accounting was done is when you had Bitcoin on your balance sheet, it was valued at the price you bought Bitcoin at. Now with the new changes, the Bitcoin on Strategy's balance sheet is going to be based on the market price of what it's actually worth, not at the price they bought it at. So as Strategy reports their earnings quarter to quarter, you're not going to see a company of like Strategy that's been reporting losses over the last several quarters. You're going to see a company that starts reporting huge gains on their balance sheet into the billions and billions of dollars if Bitcoin continues to go up. And so with that, now you take the new accounting rules for Strategy and you look at what's happening with the consideration of it being added into the S&P 500. And you look at that and you go, great, are they U.S. domiciled? Yes, they're domiciled in the U.S., so they can be considered for the S&P 500. Do they have a market capitalization of around $19 or $20 billion at a minimum? Yes, you check that box because their market capitalization is $85 billion, right? So you check that box. Have they been profitable over a trailing 4 quarters? If you look at the last 4 quarters, do the sum of those quarters add up to profitability in those 4 quarters? Strategies just coming out with their reports now. You have to look at what their next quarterly reports are going to be and to see that the trailing 4 quarters matches up to be profitable over those 4 quarters, and they check that box. And then the S&P 500 then votes on who's going to be included into the S&P 500 as one of the top 500 companies and get voted in. And so when they get voted into this thing and they get approved, which I think will happen sometime in 2025, all of a sudden what you have now, I want you to get the magnitude of this. The S&P 500 is the top 500 behemoth companies, right? Just massive companies, right? And so what happens is many index funds like the S&P 500 index, and then you have all different kinds of funds. So you have different kinds of indexes, but they all mirror the S&P 500, the top 500 companies. So you have this index fund, which is bringing tons of investors into it. It's an S&P 500 index fund. You have this index fund. It has tons of investors putting money into it. You have this index fund. It has tons of investors putting money into it. So you have all these index funds mirroring the S&P 500, the top 500 companies. Money's passively flowing into these things like crazy. Now you add strategy into the S&P 500, and you have passive money coming in, buying that stock up and gobbling it up year after year, month after month. And that will continue to be a flow of money coming into strategy in tandem with Saylor continuing to buy more and more Bitcoin. And now all of a sudden you have a machine that's running. So is the outlook of the future good for strategy? What's happening? And the bottom line is the dollar has reached its lowest point in the last 3 years. So when you look at the dollar reaching its lowest point in the last 3 years, typically when things get risky or the economy gets crazy, people go to the dollar or US bonds as a safe haven. What's happening right now? That's not happening at all. Everybody tracking this? It's not happening. So they're not using the dollar as a safe haven. They're not using US bonds as a safe haven. So people are looking for now other assets where they can store their money into, hence money flowing into gold as you see gold's price going up, hence money flowing into Bitcoin, hence money flowing into strategy. So could the new future that we're looking at be a combination and a flow of one, what's going on in the economy where clearly new money is not necessarily flowing to nations right now or flowing to the United States in times of change or fear of recession, but it's flowing into gold, but it's flowing into new assets like Bitcoin. And this is a game changer, guys. Okay. So now we look at what's happening for the future outlook of what is possible. And so when you look at the global marketplace of more and more governments moving into Bitcoin, more and more corporations moving into Bitcoin, more and more companies adopting the strategy playbook, you have something where we're setting the foundation for turbocharged growth. So the question that I posed at the beginning of this live is strategy undervalued? And the answer is most certainly, absolutely yes. If money continues to flow into Bitcoin, right? This is the bullish sign for me. If money continues to flow into Bitcoin in times of uncertainty, like is happening right now, and we start to see more and more people turning to assets like Bitcoin, this is good indicators for strategy. And now, if we get to the final and complete comparison that we were talking about today, and I'll put in one really key point in a moment. If we get the final comparison and we look at it today and we go, if you compare Apple and Tesla and Google, and they get 15 to 25x multiples, guys, on their earnings per share. Okay. So they get 20. So if they have $1 earnings per share, some of these companies are getting 15 to 25x valuation. So that means if it was $1, right, then their stock is being valued at $25. So if their earnings per share is $1, their stock is getting valued at $25. 25x multiple. So how do you then value a company like Strategy, which doesn't have the same setup, but is a stock and holds Bitcoin on the balance sheet? You're not just valuing it and going, hey, it's worth 45 billion Bitcoin that they hold right now and valuing it at 85 billion. They're worth 2x their digital gold holdings, but other companies are worth 25x their earnings. Now, I get they're not the same thing. I'm totally aware of that. One company is selling lemonade metaphorically, and they're earning money every day selling that. The other company is stacking up digital gold, right? Digital gold, they're stacking up, and they're stacking and stacking and stacking. So if a stock company is valued by its future earnings or the future outlook of what its earnings are right now, by its leadership, by its vision, by its products, wouldn't Strategy, being a stock, have to be valued in a similar way based on the product that it has, which is Bitcoin, based on what you think the future of that Bitcoin would be worth, and based on the leadership and the vision of the company? Is that fair? Is it a fair comparison? And the answer is, in my universe, absolutely 100%. It's why I'm all in on this stock. Make sense? Everybody tracking this? So this is the game that's being played right now. So this is obviously when you see Saylor buy $555 million worth of Bitcoin like he did just the other day, that's great news. As he continues to buy, that's great news. But every single reason I just gave you in this video is more great news for why this stock will dominate the marketplace. Now, it'll dominate the marketplace pending that Bitcoin continues to be a place where people are putting money, governments continue to adopt Bitcoin, and it starts to go in the direction of being like, wow, Bitcoin is the place to put money now. It is digital gold. And as corporations and institutions and retail stay solid on their path, and if they continue to stay solid on their path, Strategy will go to the moon. If there's hesitation, if there's recession, if there's depression, Strategy will absolutely crash, because Bitcoin will likely, in that situation where people are very, very afraid, Bitcoin could go down, and then Strategy would go down. So you got to be careful with this thing, because as much of it shoots up like a rocket, it could shoot down drastically as well, as we've seen recently. So finally, if we look at the corporate playbook of why it makes sense for more and more companies to adopt this strategy and why they're continuing to do that, we take a look at the viewpoint of where Saylor was in 2020. And it's no different than how a lot of companies are feeling right now. So if you're a company like Google or Tesla or Apple, in a situation where you have a ton of cash and you're dominating the world, you don't have a necessity to all of a sudden take your money and put it into Bitcoin. You don't. One day, will they? I think it'll be a standard practice where companies put their treasuries into Bitcoin. Okay. But is it actually a standard practice right now for companies like this? And do they have a reason to do it at this point? No. But look at other companies that are now putting Bitcoin on their balance sheet. And we're seeing more and more companies do it. We've heard it with the recent announcements of GameStop a month ago. We've heard it with many other companies following the playbook. Why would this be a strong point of consideration for these companies? Two reasons. Number one, if I'm a company and my stock's not doing so great right now, if I'm a company and I'm feeling the pinch of the quote unquote recession or the pinch of the slow economy right now, and if I'm a company that was valued super high and now my valuation has gone down, I'm in a position where I probably need cash. And so I'm either going to go issue more stock like companies do to raise more money. But if I issue more stock, the people who own the stock currently, the shareholders are like, they're issuing more stock, they're diluting the stock. It makes the company less attractive. So companies in that position are probably not going to be like issuing more stock because it's going to dilute their shares, right? But then they could go out and go, I'm going to go and borrow money. But a company that's struggling a little bit right now, hence like Strategy was in 2020, a company where it's hard for them to go get loans right now and secure debt, they're going to go out and try and get a loan right now. And a company that's not doing phenomenal, they might be paying 10, 12%, 15% on their loans. And so for them to borrowing money becomes very expensive as well. So when you start to look at other corporations and what they're actually going to be doing to actually secure the future of their company, and why more and more companies are going to turn to be putting Bitcoin on their balance sheet, look at Strategy when they were in 2020. And they were faced with a decision. I can sit on the money that I have left, sitting here in my treasury, sitting here in my reserves, and I can watch it sit on a melting iceberg of cash that's just we know what's happening to cash. Cash is losing its value every single year. And I can let my hard-earned cash just dwindle down and melt away, or I can make a move. Strategy's move back in August of 2020, or whatever the exact date was, turned into a stock yield of 2,466% over the last 4 or 5 years. Now, Strategy is like the pure thing. In fact, their entire company almost is made up of Bitcoin. What they do with their software company and the revenue that they bring from that is a very, very small portion of it. They are a Bitcoin company. Other companies that are adopting Bitcoin on their balance sheet, they're not going to own the marketplace like Strategy is. Strategy owns more when you put the governments and when you add up the percentage of Bitcoin that the governments own in the world. Strategy owns more than the governments. Strategy is the behemoth. Strategy owns the most Bitcoin on the planet. They own 2.5% of the supply, my friends. What do you think is going to happen? And what do you think other companies are going to do when they wake up that this is the new model? This is the new model of finance. It's not just traditional finance anymore. It's traditional finance and companies that are public on the market that are going to be adopting Bitcoin as part of their strategy, whether it's holding some of their cash in Bitcoin, whether it's putting in a total MSTR playbook, but they are going to continue to do it. And then as governments adopt Bitcoin, as the tariffs settle down, as the US wakes up and goes, hey, let's get back to figuring out ways to fund our strategic Bitcoin reserve and put new Bitcoin into it, you're going to see a change in the marketplace. And you're going to see Strategy, I believe, over the next several years. This is going to be the stock to watch. And I think it's just getting started. So whatever you think, leave it in the comment box and let me know your thoughts on it. Today, if you missed the beginning of the video, go back and watch it because I talked about why Strategy is underpriced. So in summary, here's the 4 things we talked about today, just to catch up. Number 1, first and foremost, talked about the Bitcoin buy, 555 million. Strategy. Strategy made this buy specifically through issuing common shares of stock and also through their other offering of Strike, which is preferred shares. One is just simple. It's just issuing paper where people like you and I, we buy the stock and we get the volatility. The other is preferred stock where the people invest in that. They want more of fixed returns. And so they're giving Strategy money so that they can get more fixed returns from Strategy, paying anywhere from 8% to 10% to 12%. Okay. So that's what Strike is. All right. So you have 2 ways that it raised money for this offering, 555 million. Now we're sitting in a place where they own a crap load of Bitcoin and they continue to buy. So that's number 1. Number 2, the stock is underpriced, undervalued. And I think it is that way because nobody knows how to price it right now. They just don't. What we do know is the market is willing to pay more than the stock is actually worth. Okay. And I'm not saying in terms of my valuation of what I think it's worth, but the market is paying a premium for Strategy right now. So when you hear the term that's thrown around like MNAV, that's the net asset value of their Bitcoin. So the net asset value of their Bitcoin that they hold is 40-something billion dollars, and the valuation of the company in the marketplace is 85 billion. So that means when people are buying shares of Strategy, they're willing to pay a premium. They're willing to pay above the net asset value of their Bitcoin holdings. I personally think that the value of the company is worth a lot more than it's being valued at right now because what I said earlier, when you look at Google and Tesla and Apple, they are valued based on multiples of earnings. Strategy does not have those earnings because they're not selling widgets or lemonade or iPhone. They're building a Bitcoin treasury war chest. Okay. So it's a very different model, which is why valuing it and pricing it has not been formulated in a way where most people understand it yet, nor do they understand how to price it because it's such a new thing. That's the second thing. Third thing is the dollar has dropped. It's at its lowest valuation in 3 years. So we see that confidence when we're in kind of quote unquote recession mode or potential recession or fear of recession, we see the S&P 500 has been falling. So people are like, wow, the S&P 500 is falling. That's typically a stable investment. It's falling. The dollar's falling. And in times of panic, people will typically go to safer assets. But they can't go to the dollar because it's falling. They can't go to bonds because bonds are all over the place and crazy right now. And they're not going to the S&P because the S&P has been falling. So where are they going to put their money? Gold. Hence gold prices up. Bitcoin, the new digital gold. That's what's happening. Okay. And then third, we know the new FASB accounting rules. Strategy will eventually show extreme profitability on their balance sheet because Bitcoin will continue to go up, is my prediction. And they will be a massively profitable company. They'll be added to the S&P 500, and a crap load of money is going to flow into strategy passively all the time, every day. And they're going to be collecting a lot more money where people are buying shares of their stock. Okay. And then finally, the MicroStrategy playbook is going to be followed by more and more companies because they have to. They have to. Companies will have to start holding Bitcoin on their balance sheet. They will have to. Not the big companies that don't have a care in the world, so to speak, because they got trillions of dollars in cash. Not the companies that are the Mag 7, even though Tesla is one that holds Bitcoin, but the companies that are in a place where strategy was 5 years ago when they had to start buying Bitcoin. Why? Sinking economy, less trust in governments and currencies. Okay. Harder to borrow money right now. Okay. So companies are having tough times. What are they going to do? They're going to buy an asset that doesn't get devalued like Bitcoin, but an asset that goes up in value. They're not going to hold it in the dollar, which loses its purchasing power. They're going to put it in Bitcoin, which increases in value. So the purchasing power is better. So that's what we covered today. Hope it serves you guys. If you like what you heard here, I do have, if you want to get the 2-minute updates on a daily basis, I created a new platform called MGame. You can go to the link down below. We're going to be releasing this in the next couple of weeks, where basically you can get updates on a social platform of your favorite stocks and your favorite crypto. It's going to be based on things that I'm picking that I'm supportive of, not financial advice, like strategy, like Bitcoin, like Tesla. And so you can go get the 2-minute update on what's happening in the market and why it's happening. You can go find out the future outlooks for these companies. You can find fun facts about them in a very short, bite-sized component. So if you miss a show like this, or you're not in the mood to watch long content, you get it quick, get sent to your phone or to your email, and boom, you can just pop up on your phone. And whoa, here's the update for Bitcoin today. Here's upcoin for strategy. Here's upcoin for Tesla. And there's an AI version of me that pops up and delivers to you, so you can hear it in a video format as well. It's pretty cool. I'll show you the actual platform right now if you want to see it. But this is the platform. It's called MGame. My whole mission is to make money easy and make understanding it simple. And so you can see you'll get a Bitcoin update. You'll have other stocks on here, not financial advice, and you'll get their price update of what's going on with them in the marketplace. We'll have leaderboards where it'll be fun. We'll play games, and people can make picks and win on the leaderboards and earn cash and prizes and things like that. So it's just a fun community that I'm building to make money and investing simple for anybody and to not use complex terms. So basically, anybody on the face of the planet can understand investing and make it simple. So that's the game. If you want to join and check it out, feel free and go down to the link below. You can just get on the early access list and basically you enter your name, you'll email your cell, you'll get on the early access list, and then we'll email you and let you know when the platform's live and you can start watching the videos. Okay. All right, guys. Hope it serves you. Good to see you here, Phil. MSTR, let's go. We got Dill up here. We got Warpoint here. We got War Room there. So that's the game, everyone. And where do we end today? 317, 318 on strategy. All right. I hope it serves you guys. Hope you're enjoying things and hope you have a great day. Hope things are going well for you. And, at the end of the day, not financial advice, not tax advice, not legal advice. I am holding strong and holding on for the rocket ride because I still believe it's coming. And we just on a little bit of a lag. There's a lag going on here. Okay. All right. See you guys soon. Have a great, phenomenal day. And comment and like down below when I end this video so we get more and more people commenting on YouTube. Thanks.